and specifically how you can make your paper flow. So what are the key things that make a paper sound good and to have it flow from one idea to the next? The first thing is for you to have focused ideas. And by that, what I mean is you don't want to add extra words, sentences, or quotes that don't contribute to the point you're trying to make. We talked about some of these ideas in your conferences. You're going to organize your ideas as much as possible. So you're going to write an intro that lets the reader know what's coming, stick to one main idea per paragraph, and use topic sentences to tell what each paragraph is about. I want to point out that this kind of paper flow I'm talking about is particularly for academic writing. When you're making connections, use transition words, phrases, and sentences to help the reader move from one point to the next. So these are the two things that this presentation is going to focus on today. But the last point is important as well, but that'll be a separate presentation, and that is not shifting tenses, perspectives, or voice. So for example, when you go from you to we in the middle of a paragraph, it's disorienting. Okay, so what are the purposes of topic sentences? Basically to state the main point of your paragraph, to give the reader a sense of direction or tell where the information is going, and to guide readers from where they've been, to make a transition. Now you don't always need to make a transition, but you will sometimes. Some of you have learned to make a transition in that sentence that goes before your paragraph, in the previous paragraph, and I've been advising people to get out of the habit of doing that, just because in my opinion it makes it confusing, and it's simpler to try to put your transition in the new paragraph, or you don't have to necessarily have a transition. Okay, in terms of where topic sentences go, they're going to start in the first or second sentence in the paragraph. So why don't we start in the back there with Nick? Can you go ahead and read that?
Williams begins by analyzing the effects of global warming on temperatures in the Atlantic.
Okay, great. And very straightforward, clear topic sentence, right? And you can tell immediately what's going on as we go toward the beginning of your paper because he's beginning. And we know exactly what this paragraph is going to be about if the person does a good job of writing the paragraph. Okay, Alex?
Sarah Hendrick disagrees. In cucumbers aren't really vegetables. She argues that.
Okay. Has anyone ever written a first sentence of a paragraph like this? Very short. Yes, maybe. Okay. And this, in my opinion, is a perfectly fine way to introduce a paragraph. And the nice thing about it is if you've had a long series of complicated sentences, it's nice to vary your structure. And in this case, you've got this nice, clear beginning. We know what preceded in the last paragraph, right? What was the last paragraph about? No, this is a whole new paper.
She disagrees on.
Right. What did she disagree with? What did the last person say? Exactly. The last paragraph we can figure out meant that someone was talking about how cucumbers are vegetables, right? So you can tell immediately what that paragraph is about, and so you can consider that a transition. It's nice and clear, and now we know that this paragraph is all going to be about her evidence. Okay, here's another case.
But are all schools failing? Chandra Singh cites his 2008 finding that Chicago has improved.
Okay, what was the previous paragraph probably about? Exactly. So there's your transition. This is one way to do a transition, okay? Where essentially you've got your topic sentence where you've got the bulk of your information is in the second sentence. All right.
Secondly, Chen notes that walruses were hunted in the 19th century to the brink of extinction.
Okay, we don't know exactly what was in the previous paragraph, but we can guess that he made his first point in that first paragraph, and now he's going to make another point about walruses.
I think that the second half of Smith's paper argues much more effectively.
I don't think this is a great topic sentence, but I just wanted to point out that there are going to be some papers where it's okay to use I. Generally, in this case, this really means the same thing as the second half of Smith's paper argues much more effectively, right? Because it's implied that it's you doing the thinking. but I just want to let you know, this is one way you can start it. Does anybody have any questions about the way these are written? Okay, so in the paragraph, once you've gotten your topic sentence, what you're going to do is go ahead and add examples to support it, and here are some details of the kinds of things you can add. Examples, tell a story, discuss a process, and so on. They talk about cause and effect. These are all different kinds of evidence, and you might be using more than one of these in the same paragraph. Okay, here's an example of a good paragraph.
The whole thing. Although clowns are supposed to make people laugh, some children find them frightening. And clowns scare the crap out of kids. Rachel Jennings notes that 26% of children begin crying when they see their first clown. She tells the story of Thomas, an 8-year-old who died from fright at a Chicago circus. In an effort to protect its children, St. Louis has even banned clowns from its jurisdiction.
Okay, so this is a fictional paragraph. This is not really something that is true, but I wanted to make a point about clowns. Okay, so from the first sentence, you can basically figure out what this paragraph is about, right? Some children find clowns frightening, and now we're going to present evidence for why this is. And the first thing gives a statistic, and the second thing actually brings in some legal information about supposedly there was enough of a concern that the citizenry went ahead and banned clowns. Okay. You can notice too that just in terms of citing, that what we have here, because we have mentioned who she is, we don't need to have her name here. And also you can see MLA style, we've got the quotation, the citation, and then the page number. Whereas down here, because we haven't mentioned where the law came from, where this citation came from, that'll be in our works cited page. All we have to do is mention Jones. You don't have to say Jones in the page, and that's why the name appears here. You can also see there's no need for a quotation. Any questions? So that's a paragraph that holds together. Now let's look at when do you decide to start a new paragraph? Basically when you're switching to a new idea, when you're highlighting an important point, when you're showing a change in time or place, when you're showing a contrast, showing changes in speakers when you have a dialogue, if you're writing fiction, for example, when you're breaking up a dense text. And in terms of breaking up a dense text, if you have 3/4 of a page where you have one paragraph or longer, you probably have tried to put in too much information into one paragraph. So what you should look at that paragraph and consider is whether or not you actually have one idea that you've just talked a whole lot about. Do you really need all of that in that one paragraph? Can you cut it down, or do you really have more than one paragraph worth of ideas, and so you need to split it up? So just visually glance at your paper, and if you see that really long paragraph, you figure you might have a problem. By the way, just in terms of writing paragraphs, I want to say generally speaking, I think the class is really good at doing that. So for a lot of you, this is a matter of refining what you're doing. What that actually says is how do you argue, how do you change information within the paragraph? How do you arrange it? Excuse me. You're going to arrange it by time. First something happened and then something else happened after that. By space, we move from here to here. By climax, where you start small and then you build towards a conclusion, or by order of importance. So figure out what kind of information you have in those sentences, and don't just throw them in there randomly and not think about how they're organized. If you create this logical order, what you'll find is it makes it easier for your reader to follow, and that will include your Next thing I want to talk about is transitions and why they're important. Basically, the right transition word or phrase is going to help you move from one point to the next, help the reader follow what you're doing. So what these transitions do, if they're used correctly, is they continue an idea, show it a shift in thought, show contrast, show conclusion. So here are some examples of transitions that continue a line of reasoning. So this list is designed to help you vary some of the words you're using to show that the ideas are moving forward. When you want to change a line of reasoning, you've got these contrast words. However, on the other hand, but, yet, nevertheless, and on the contrary. Some of these, for example, however, is a little bit more formal than but. So depending on what kind of tone you're going for. For opening a paragraph or for general use, these don't do quite as much in terms of transition as the others, but they can give you it's more of a tone for the most part. You're looking at transitional phrases. You use these for organizing ideas either within a paragraph, or they can be used at your topic sentence level. So you have one at the beginning of each topic sentence. And you can see these have slight variations in meaning. And these are also very handy to use in terms of giving very succinct organization to your paper. So you could start off one paragraph saying, in the first place, Cascio says, pursuing this further, he discusses in more detail, and finally, he addresses this. Okay. When you're going to conclude, you can use this at the end of a paragraph, at the end of a paper's paragraph, meaning your concluding paragraph. And I think most people are pretty familiar with these, but if you want to see a greater variety, what to do now is go through and just illustrate how this works. So Nicole, can you do that?
Mills argues that transitions transform disjointed sentences into coherent ideas. It's possible to write without them. The writing will be hard to follow. The reader will be left struggling to connect the ideas herself. The sentences will sound choppy. Writers should develop an ear for the meanings and uses of transitions.
Okay, now here's how it sounds just by adding some transitions. And
Lastly, Mills argues that transitions transform disjointed sentences into coherent ideas. Although it's possible to write without them, she says, the writing will be hard to follow. Furthermore, the reader will be left struggling to connect the ideas herself, and the sentences will sound choppy. Therefore, writers should develop an ear for the meanings and uses of transitions.
okay, so I've got 7 transition words here. What effect do they have on the paragraph?
Really good sound.
Okay, I've got clearer and
It
it connects these ideas better. You can also see it's a way for you to vary writing style so it doesn't all sound the same. So that's another thing when you're looking at style, you can look at how you have some shorter sentences and some longer sentences, and sometimes it's a matter of taking 2 short ones and connecting them or showing the relationship between them. So I would recommend that you start really paying attention to these little words and seeing how you can use them to get more of an effect. You can see the other advantage too is that none of this language that I added is sophisticated in it. It's not a big word, right? But it has a kind of big effect in terms of making you sound more sophisticated. Okay, that's it.